Well, hey there, I'm Joshua Johnson. It's great to be with you on this Friday, March 18th. And tonight, we are answering your questions about the war in Ukraine. President Biden probably had lots of questions today for China's President Xi Jinping. China has not condemned Russia's invasion outright. They spoke by phone for 2 hours. What impact will that call have? Plus,
realistically, how long we can expect this war to go on and what would be the political outcome for Russia and Ukraine?
You've sent us lots of good questions about this war. Our experts will have the answers just ahead. Then,
even though our cases are continuing to come down, I would not be surprised if in the next couple of weeks we might well see an increase in cases.
That's because cases are rising in Europe. Is the U.S. in for another COVID wave? And the fastest growing event in professional rodeo belongs to women. We'll take you there. How many world leaders do you think could influence Russia's president, Vladimir Putin? Today, President Biden spoke to perhaps the only one who can. Mr. Biden spoke for nearly 2 hours with China's President Xi Jinping. The White House said President Biden warned of consequences if China supports Russia's war. Today's call seemed to be part of a larger White House strategy. It's trying to prevent China from helping Russia endure sanctions from the U.S. and Europe. Both Beijing and Washington described the talk as a detailed and candid conversation. It's unclear whether President Xi was receptive to what the White House wants. Yesterday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said China has a responsibility to influence Mr. Putin. These two presidents are close. They've met 38 times since 2013. And at one point, Mr. Xi even said there were no limits to that relationship. Meanwhile, Russian bombs and missiles continue to strike Ukraine. Today, the Russian military bombed a military facility a few miles outside of Lviv. That's about 40 miles from the Polish border. We'll have a report from there in a bit. Lviv's mayor spoke with NBC's Gabe Gutierrez today.
Mariupol bombardments, Kharkiv, or Lviv, I feel equally the same pain in my heart.
Тобто нищать тіло України.
They are destroying basically the body of Ukraine.
Ми, звичайно, маємо великий потенціал, щоб відновлюватися.
We of course have good resilience potential to renew our
І ми вам це показали сьогодні 23-й день.
Today is 23rd day and this is a good evidence of that.
Путіна не вистачить ракет, щоб збомбардувати всі міста, всі об'єкти.
Not enough bombs to destroy all the cities all over Ukraine.
Let's begin tonight with Boston College political science professor Robert Ross. He's also an associate of Harvard University's Fairbanks Center for Chinese Studies. Professor Ross, welcome.
Good to be here.
What would you say are the big things that we should know about China's relationship to Russia?
Well, I think we understand that China is the senior partner. They dominate the Russian border with their own military. They dominate Russia with their economy. They dominate and lead Russia in Central Asia. So in many respects, Russia needs China rather than China needs Russia. Yes, China buys oil from Russia, but Russia needs that capital more than China needs Russian oil.
Is that why President Putin and President Xi are so close? Is it more that Putin is staying close to President Xi rather than they are each mutually staying close to each other?
I'd caution before we think how close they are. These are two countries that have their own national interests. They need each other. And so at this point in time, Russia certainly needs China because it's isolated throughout the world. And if it were to lose China as a partner, that would be devastating. So China on this part has interests. And its interests are in part keeping alive its economic relationship with Russia. But it doesn't want to burn its bridges to the West, particularly to Europe. So it's treading cautiously between Russia and the United States, between Russia and Europe.
Talk to me about this conversation between President Biden and President Xi. China is now a major player on the world's economy. It is a rival increasingly to the United States for economic reasons as well as other military and diplomatic reasons. What's your sense of the limits of that call, the possibilities of that call, whether this call would even be worth it?
Well, I think it's significant that Biden has warned China, do not support Russia. He did not say, you must support the United States. So we're not expecting China to fall into line with American and European sanctions, total lockstep, because we understand China is not happy with American policy toward China. And it's a big ask to say, we have started a trade war. We started a technology war. We have a global coalition against you. We're supporting Taiwan, and now we need your help. And so I think the Americans understand this is a big ask, and it's not clear why the Chinese would support us. So we're looking for the Chinese, don't undermine the most significant sanctions. And those would be banking sanctions, and those would be high-tech sanctions. Understand that India is now buying more oil from Russia than it did in the past. Europe is still buying oil. China's buying wheat. So nowhere around the world are countries in lockstep with the United States, and we're not looking for that, particularly because China is in no hurry to bail the U.S. out, given the problems that the U.S. has caused China.
So suppose that President Biden had this conversation, just for the sake of argument, with President Xi, and President Xi was like, okay, we'll help, we'll do what we can. What might that look like? Does it look like conversations between President Xi and President Putin? Does it look like China doing something, not doing something, creating barriers? What kinds of levers could China, hypothetically, pull?
Well, first we understand that whatever China says to Putin, Putin doesn't listen because China's a friend. And certainly China and Xi Jinping does not look at Putin as a friend. As National Security Advisor Sullivan suggested, Putin may have lied to China prior to Putin's invasion of the Ukraine. So there's no love lost between these two people. Second, we need to understand that the Russian economy seems to be in freefall, and they're bogged down in this Ukraine war. So it's not clear what else might persuade Putin to retreat or to agree to a deal. He's dug in his heels. He's got his personal interests at stake, his personal reputation, and he seems to be in no mood to compromise for anyone. So yes, the Chinese might be able to do some more. They might be able to say, we're not going to buy wheat from you, we're not going to buy oil from you, but then that would burn that relationship with Russia, which they're not prepared to do, and it's not clear that would make a difference, given Putin's psyche, his personal stake. He seems in no mood to compromise with anyone right now.
Could I get your reaction to a conversation between my colleague Jose Diaz-Balart and Congressman Adam Smith, who chairs the House Armed Services Committee, in terms of the possible mentality that China might be going into this with? Watch.
With this call between President Biden and the Chinese leader going on as we speak, what do you want the president to tell Jinping?
Well, I want him to put as much pressure as possible on China to make sure that they don't help Russia. I mean, China really doesn't know what to do right now. They did not expect this invasion. Putin was not honest with them about his intentions. They certainly want to maintain a strong relationship with Russia because they see Russia as being on their side in terms of wanting to weaken us, basically.
Professor, with regard to that remark from Chairman Smith, China really doesn't know what to do right now. I wonder what you make of that, particularly because there was a recent UN General Assembly vote to condemn what's happening, and China has abstained. China has been kind of trying to be the one in the middle, going, guys, calm down, settle down, everybody. Let's just have cooler heads. And it seems like they've tried to play the grown-up in the room in the way by not getting terribly involved in all this.
Well, understand that when Biden goes into this phone call, preparing to lecture China, and from all we know, the purpose of the phone call from Biden was to warn them, don't do X and Y. We're using public diplomacy to create pressure on China, and then we go in and lecture China. That's not about to get you very far, to lecture a great power, to warn them, to threaten them. And what the Chinese are looking for in response is, well, you started a trade war, you're helping Taiwan, you have a tech war. Is our relationship continuing to be in free fall? And if it is, what's the upside of China helping the United States? Because we're going to help you, but then you're going to put more sanctions on us in the future. So we're looking for the Chinese to help us out, at minimum, by not helping Russia. And as you say, by trying to be on the sidelines, by perhaps negotiating some sort of ceasefire if they can, which is doubtful. But do not help the Russians, do not alleviate their problems. But the Chinese are saying, that's nice, we understand, and we don't want to lose our cooperation with Europe, but what's in it for us? They understand the situation in the Ukraine is a humanitarian disaster, but they also understand this is a U.S.-Russia conflict of interest, that the U.S. has been putting great pressure on Russia to accommodate American interests. And so the Chinese are going to say, what about Chinese interests? And it's not clear the Americans are prepared to give that at this time.
I was just going to ask you before I have to let you go, what is in it for China? Are we talking more carrot or more stick in terms of the U.S. response to whatever China might or might not do?
They'd like to see America alleviate some of the pressure on Taiwan and the use of Taiwan against China. They'd like to know that the tech sanctions may stabilize. You'll drop your rhetoric on genocide. And the Chinese are also looking to see that the relationship with Europe will not be undermined and America will not challenge European cooperation with China. These are all important to China. And this is something the United States has not done. And the U.S. has shown no interest whatsoever in recognizing Chinese interests. The U.S. position has been, we have a frontal Cold War with China. We're not going to have the cooperation in Korea, no cooperation in Iran, no cooperation on global climate change. Oh, now we need China. We hadn't anticipated that. We need them for Russia. And China says, well, no, now you need us. What's the quid pro quo?
Boston College political scientist Robert Ross. Professor, I appreciate you talking us through this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If Vladimir Putin is committing war crimes, who's going to arrest him for it? That's not a bad question. One of many good questions you've sent us in the last few days. Our experts will answer that and more of your questions about the war in Ukraine. We're glad you're with us on this Friday for Now Tonight from NBC News. The war in Ukraine may seem senseless, but we can make some sense of it. Why it's happening, what's being done about it, who the players are, and how this parallels past wars. You've asked us about all that and more. Thank you so much for these great questions. Now let's get you some answers. Joining us tonight are retired Colonel Brendan Kearney, a former U.S. Marine Corps Chief of Staff to Europe. Colonel Kearney, welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
And James Goldgeier, a visiting fellow at the Brookings Institution and a visiting scholar at Stanford. Mr. Goldgeier, welcome.
Thank you.
These are some fantastic questions, and I wonder, Mr. Goldgeier, if we might start with you and a very basic but smart question that Brenda left in our inbox.
Why is Russia having this war with Ukraine? Why? I just want to get a complete understanding of what is the reason behind it.
Brenda, that's a very good, very complex question. Mr. Goldgeier, what would you say to Brenda? Why is Russia having this war with Ukraine?
Well, I mean, you see these images, these civilians being bombed, this just brutal and unprovoked attack by Russia. It seems totally senseless, but it fits into Vladimir Putin's worldview. This is, you know, all these grievances he's built up over the years, ever since the collapse of the Soviet Union. His views that Ukraine doesn't have a right to exist as an independent country, that this is a territory that belongs to Russia. And of course, he miscalculated badly because he thought going in with his military assault that people in Ukraine would welcome the Russians and agree that they should join Russia in a larger country. It's just absolutely mind-boggling that he's done this, but it was also predictable.
Colonel Kearney, what would you add to that in terms of Brenda's question? Why is this happening?
Well, you know, this is an extension of what he did in the Crimea here a decade ago. So he's been very open in saying what he wanted to do. He's been very open in saying where he thought Russia's place was in the world, in Europe, and in his relationship with Ukraine. So Brenda asked a great question. I get asked that virtually every day. It's very apparent as to why he's gone ahead and done what he's done.
One of the other questions that comes up a lot has to do with NATO. We got several questions about NATO, including these from Priscilla and Loretta. Here's what they left in our inbox.
Why is it that Ukraine wasn't allowed to be part of NATO when they have been asking for years?
What prevented Ukraine from joining NATO previously?
Priscilla, Loretta, thank you for those questions. Colonel, can I stick with you? Give us a bit of the backstory in terms of NATO and Ukraine.
Well, there's two pieces to it. You have the military piece and you have the political piece. From a military perspective, there was an effort that's been going on for a number of years since Ukraine first indicated they wanted to join NATO, and that was to modernize their military so it met NATO standards. You know, if you come into an organization like NATO, you've got to be able from the get-go, in case of having to go to an Article 5 situation, of being able to operate with the other NATO countries. And quite frankly, and Ukraine would admit this, they were nowhere near being close to meeting those NATO standards. So they've worked extremely hard over the last decade plus to achieve those. They weren't quite
Colonel,
there
forgive
yet.
me. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Colonel. I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but you used a term I think we should clarify. You mentioned Article 5 responsibilities. Article 5 of the NATO Charter is the part that says an attack on one NATO country is an attack on everybody. It's what the U.S. invoked after 9/11, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The other piece of this, I was addressing the military piece, and I think I've got that point across. The other piece is political, and that is that NATO holds its members to high standards in terms of a functioning bureaucracy, and one that is supposedly has minimal impact when it comes to crime and corruption. And quite frankly, I think most outside observers would agree that the Ukraine had some problems with that they also have been continuing to work with. Bottom line is to both those questioners, the Ukrainians knew exactly what was required of them in terms of meeting the NATO standards. They were working mightily to achieve those standards. They hadn't arrived yet, and whether or not they end up in NATO is still a question that has to be answered in the future.
Mr. Goldgeier, we got a lot of questions about Vladimir Putin and his future. Here are some questions that Joe and Betty and Brandon left in our inbox.
Who's going to arrest Putin for these war crimes? And isn't invading another country a war crime in itself?
Why can't we just do a covert mission to take Putin out? Problem solved.
How come we don't attack Putin now and end it all? Why are we waiting in the first place?
Thank you, Joe and Betty and Brandon, for your questions. Mr. Goldgeier, what would you say in terms of just the options for what to do about Vladimir Putin specifically, personally?
Well, the options we've chosen are to use sanctions and, try to punish Russia as much as possible, punish the people around Putin as much as possible. Those sentiments that were expressed in the questions are totally understandable, but Putin has engaged in this illegal war, committing these war crimes against Ukrainian citizens. That doesn't mean that we should then do something illegal, like assassinate a foreign leader. Ever since President Ford issued an executive order against assassinations of foreign leaders, the United States, has sought to be very careful about something that would be seen as illegal and would certainly generate enormous opposition against the United States from the Russian people. I think we just can't be in that kind of business. If Putin is going to be removed from office, it has to come from within Russia.
And can we also just be clear on this, Mr. Goldgeier, just to carry this a little further forward? I appreciate you using the word assassination, because that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about killing a head of state, which is literally an act of war. But also on top of that, I don't think our allies would go for that. I don't know how we convince NATO and our friends in the European Union and Canada and the UK that that's our best idea in terms of how to deal with this. I just don't know how we would do that and have any of our allies follow us into that plan.
Right, and just remember, right now, Russia is the global pariah. The international community is united against Russia. There were 141 countries that voted for that UN resolution condemning this aggression. That's where we want the focus to be, on Putin and his illegal activities. We don't want to muddy the waters by doing something ourselves that would be counterproductive, illegal, and would generate enormous opposition, not only within Russia, but as you suggest, in other countries as well.
So that kind of a direct approach is probably not going to fly with the international community, but there are other kinds of military options that have been contemplated. For those of you who missed last night's show, we had a long conversation, this really wonderful debate about the prospects of a no-fly zone over Ukraine. If you missed that, go check us out on social. We're at NBC Now tonight. Very much worth watching. But another thing that came up, Colonel, had to do with UN peacekeepers, putting them on the ground. Here's what John wants to know. Listen.
Why aren't we having peacekeeping UN troops there to help keep the peace or to provide protection for corridors?
Good question, John. Colonel?
It's an excellent question. There's a variety of reasons that it really isn't practical to use United Nations troops in peacekeeping. First of all, you essentially have to have both sides agree to the peacekeepers being on the ground. And I don't think either the Ukrainians or the Russians are at that stage right now where they would agree to have the peacekeepers there. Secondly, traditionally, most of these peacekeepers come from countries that, quite frankly, they need the money. Their troops, their militaries are underfunded, and by going on UN peacekeeping duty, they end up being able to build up the coffers for their own countries. You make money. And I don't think there's any countries out there right now, absent one or two, that would want to put themselves in between two belligerents that really have engaged in a total combined arms warfare. It would be brutal. It'd be very tough to ask even the most professional military forces to be put in that type of situation.
And Colonel, I just want us to be clear. We've talked about a lot of different kinds of military engagements, no-fly zones and Russia's attacks and Ukraine's attacks and NATO and UN peacekeepers. These are different kinds of militaries, right? The UN peacekeepers are not there for the same reason as NATO, which is to defend NATO members mutually. Like, these are very different kinds of organizations with different kinds of missions and limits on what they'll do.
That's right. And really, it takes a highly capable, well-trained military force to handle the type of situation that this type of peacekeeping operation would involve. And I just don't see anybody out there right now that would do it, let alone the UN expressing the willingness to go ahead and put UN troops in that type of situation.
Let me get to a few more questions before our time is up. Mr. Goldgeier, we've heard a lot of comparisons between World War II and now. I wonder if we could go, just for the control room, to number 7, question number 7, which is an email from Andy. Andy asked, is Russia getting away with so much simply because everyone's afraid to stand up to Russia and trigger World War III? Wasn't the Budapest Memorandum of 1994 supposed to protect Ukraine from what's happening right now? I'm going to ask you, Mr. Goldgeier, to just answer that first part. We did talk about the Budapest Memorandum on this program not too long ago. That was the deal that got nuclear weapons out of Ukraine in exchange for a kind of gentleman's agreement that they would protect it from invasion. Russia broke that agreement. But what about that? The phrase World War III gets thrown around a lot these days, Mr. Goldgeier. Is that an apt concern?
Well, anytime you're talking about potential conflict with a nuclear-armed adversary like Russia, which is the other nuclear superpower other than the United States, I mean, you have to be concerned about escalation to major war. I mean, right now, this war is limited, unfortunately for the Ukrainians, of course, they are bearing the full brunt of this Russian assault. It is limited to Ukraine, and NATO is being very careful while supplying Ukraine with weapons to help the Ukrainians defend themselves. NATO is being very careful. President Biden has been very clear that U.S. troops, NATO troops aren't going to be going to Ukraine, not going to establish a no-fly zone, which would then have to be enforced and could lead to shoot-downs of Russian planes. So I think, there's a legitimate concern about escalation, and Russia is a nuclear-armed adversary, and Putin has raised the specter of nuclear weapons use in this war. So it's this balancing act between trying to do as much as possible to support these brave Ukrainians and not escalating to a broader NATO-Russia war.
Let me see if we can squeeze in one more question that we got here in Manhattan on this glorious day in New York. We spent some time down at Washington Square Park, and Colonel, we heard from Shovik, who had this question. Watch.
Realistically, how long we can expect this war to go on, and what would be the political outcome for Russia and Ukraine?
It's a good question, Colonel. The end game. How long might this go on, and what would be the political outcome for Russia and Ukraine?
Well, it is a great question, and Shovik clearly has been thinking about it, as we all have. How long will it go on? It could go on weeks, months, years. Particularly the longer term is if the Russians somehow manage to pull off short-term military success by taking over the country. They will then fight a long-term guerrilla warfare that I see just lasting years and years and years. The political outcome, obviously, is going to be determined by the participants themselves and how this does end up ending, whenever it does end. Russia could change its approach tomorrow if Putin was removed or somebody else took over the power there and said, "Okay, this is crazy. Let's back out." That would be a good approach. Step number one. But I don't think any of us see that happening anytime soon. The Ukrainians politically, they're not going to give up. They're going to keep fighting, and they're going to, I think, continue to do the magnificent job that has impressed the entire world here over the coming weeks, months, if not years.
I'll tell you one political outcome that I would suspect, at least if things continue on this trajectory, that Ukraine will become a closer member of at least the Western international community, and President Zelensky's star will continue to rise. I think he has impressed all the right people and been asking a lot of the right questions, so we will see if that continues. This has been extremely helpful. Colonel Brendan Kearney and Mr. James Goldgeier, who made a little time for us on his birthday to answer some questions. Gentlemen, we appreciate you sharing your insights tonight. I didn't want to embarrass you till the very end. I didn't want to distract you, but many happy returns to you, sir, and thank you both for being with us. We appreciate it. I'm sorry, I've spilled state secrets. I'm very sorry, sir. Thank you both very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, chances are these answers sparked some more questions for you. That's a good thing. So please, keep them coming. Anything at all that you would like answered. We are at NBC Now Tonight on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. You can always reach us directly by voicemail, 888-575-2NBC. That's 888-575-2622. Or email us, nowtonight@nbcnews.com. Up next, one of the questions that a lot of viewers have been asking. What is it like reporting from Ukraine? NBC's Cal Perry lays out how journalists are covering this war just ahead. Stay close. Reporting on the war in Ukraine, we told you about the Russian airstrike outside Lviv, Ukraine, earlier in the show, and that marks new escalation in the Russian invasion. The military is now bombarding areas around a city hundreds of thousands traveled to for shelter from the war. From our partners at Sky News, correspondent Alistair Bunkall has more from near Lviv.
The airstrikes woke Lviv just before 6:30 in the morning. 4 cruise missiles, fired from the Black Sea, hit an aircraft repair facility on the edge of the city. Again, Russian forces have shown they can and will strike deep into Ukraine. Nowhere now is safe or off limits.
We can smell the smoke in the air, but this is as close as we can get. We're probably 400 or 500 meters away. Police and security are really on edge this morning. They are stopping every single car that is heading towards the airport complex. There is a feeling that this is the second time the Russians have been successful in airstrikes around Lviv, and there is a worry that there could be Russian saboteurs, Russian agents operating inside Lviv and helping out Moscow.
People here had been expecting the Russians to attack the airport, so many weren't all that surprised when it actually happened. We have a bomb shelter next door, an old Soviet one, this lady tells me. So we will work, and keep working. Everything will be fine. We are preparing for victory. That's the sort of defiance that President Putin is struggling against. In Moscow today, he emerged from the security of the Kremlin to address a vast crowd, marking the 2014 annexation of the Crimea. It is the first time he's been seen in public since the invasion began.
В ходе этой военной операции плечо к плечу помогают, поддерживают друг друга. А если надо, то как родного брата прикрывают своим телом от пули на поле боя. Такого единения у нас давно не было.
These images of Russian nationalism and seeming devotion to their president are for a domestic audience, but also designed to show the world he is not a leader on the run. Putin has staked everything on this war. Defeat is unthinkable for him. With chilling determination, he finished his speech by quoting the patron saint of Russia's nuclear fleet.
Он не проиграл ни одного сражения. Он как-то сказал, что грозы сии пойдут во славу России. Так было тогда, так сегодня и так будет всегда. Спасибо!
The mood here in Ukraine couldn't be more contrasting. Ivan Skripnik was killed when his base was hit by Russian airstrikes over the weekend. His comrades mourn with the grim realization that it could be them next. They are running out of space in the city's military cemetery. The earth mounds of fresh graves are marked by temporary crosses and the portraits of the men who now lie beneath the soil that they died defending. The pain of a mother's loss echoes across this country. The feeling of pride for a fallen soldier competes with stunned bewilderment and anger, so much anger that it has somehow come to this. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Lviv.
Reporting on the war in Ukraine is increasingly dangerous. This week, 2 journalists with Fox News were killed on assignment there. Cameraman Pierre Zakrevsky and consultant Alexandra Kuvshinova. A few days before that, journalist and filmmaker Brent Renaud was shot and killed near the war's front line. He has worked for NBC News in the past, though he was not working for us at the time in Ukraine. Journalists from around the world landed in Ukraine before Russian troops invaded weeks ago. Their work takes them close to the dangers of war, sometimes very close.
And there we go. Ali, I've just heard the first siren has just gone off. And I've been told by city officials that that indicates that this is a city under attack. That, again, is the first time we have heard sirens in the capital, Kyiv.
Things here are very, very jittery. So it's probably not a good idea for us to be live on camera with you.
So the micro mood is very tense because we live in a city that's under curfew where, I'm not kidding, we had like a patrol hiding behind that bush there.
We spent hours and hours in traffic crossing successive checkpoints with Ukrainian soldiers who were extremely jittery. You know, at one point, soldiers came up to the car with AK-47s drawn, demanded we get out. We could hear them cocking and recocking their AK-47s behind us. It was absolutely terrifying.
There's an oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I don't speak. I speak English. This train station, Nugati Station. Okay. Good luck.
As a mother, just to have all of this out of your control.
I have to be strong.
The frame of the window all came right on top of her, and she said it has left her determined, but also infuriated, furious with Vladimir Putin.
This is one of our friends we've been playing soccer with all morning.
It is joyful to see a child who is smiling and at least having a little fun. I'll let you go back and play a little more soccer. Ellison, thank you so much, seriously, for all you're doing there. We want to talk a lot more about this.
NBC's Cal Perry joins us again from Lviv near the border with Poland. Cal, I do want to talk about what's happening there on the ground, but first I should ask you about being a reporter covering the war in Ukraine. What's something that people who've never had to do this work might not expect or might not think of in terms of what it takes to cover a war like this?
Well, we talk a lot about the supply lines for soldiers. How about the supply lines for journalists? So I'm working in a hotel that has power, water, and food, but it also has dozens of people who are behind the camera, whom you don't see, who are responsible for organizing what is a Herculean effort to not just keep us on the air, but to keep us fed and to keep us having water and to keep the power running. And in case the power goes off, to have generators and to have fuel and to have security and safety. So when you see me every night, what you don't see are the dozens of people that are here off camera supporting the work that I'm doing, supporting the work that my colleague Richard Engel is doing. Erin McLaughlin standing on a balcony with bombs dropping around her. Matt Bradley going through a checkpoint where soldiers are very jittery. I'm in Lviv. I feel like I'm in a safe-ish place. There have been airstrikes, but again, we are incredibly grateful here for the power and the water and the food that we have every day, knowing that my colleagues are out there on these front lines being incredibly brave and in a situation as you well laid out where reporters are dying in the field. So I think that was the thing that probably the viewers don't know is just how much effort it takes on behalf of so many people at this network and at every network to keep us on the air.
How do you manage your safety out there? I know that in some wars there are people who will walk around with vests that say press on them so that combatants will at least know that these are reporters and hopefully follow some kind of international norms not to attack or kidnap reporters. But how do you stay safe in a place like that?
And that's a tricky one. Do you identify yourself as media? Do you wear a flak jacket that says press on it in a place where the media is being targeted? I think the attacks we've seen on the media so far have been nature of war, fog of war, whatever you want to call it. People are very scared. If they're Ukrainian soldiers, they're very, very scared. The reality is these Russian soldiers are going to be terrified as well. They are clearly targeting civilians. They're targeting areas where civilians are traveling through. They are hitting these roads. And so journalists are naturally caught up in that. We take security as seriously as we can take it. What do I mean by that? We try to minimize the risk. You're never going to remove the risk in coming to a place like that. Like this. So you do the best you can to minimize it. In Lviv, we're able to minimize the risk in a way that Richard Engel, standing in Kyiv, is not able to minimize the risk. His risk assessment is always going to be higher because of where he is. That's just sort of what we try to do. We do also, behind the scenes, have security folks who try to look out for us, and that's an advantage, I have to say, that we have here on the ground.
I should ask you about the situation in Ukraine before I have to let you go. President Zelensky is calling for peace talks, saying it's Russia's only chance to reduce the damage from what he described as its own mistakes. What's the mood where you are? Does this seem like this is going to go on indefinitely, or is there any hope that there might be some way to either find peace, create a ceasefire, to do something about all this?
So, and Joshua, I think the mood probably this morning changed a little bit in the city I'm in, Lviv, because of those airstrikes this morning. 6 rockets fired in the direction of the airport, 4 actually landed. It was something that people were anticipating. You heard it in that report earlier. We kind of in our minds have a list of targets that we're aware of, and of course we're not going to talk about. So it wasn't a shock, but it was certainly a widening of the war. This new Zelensky address in the last 2 hours, the headline has to be the one you're alluding to. He says it is time to talk. It is time to negotiate. He is walking an impossible line where he's trying to look out and protect Ukrainian sovereignty, to protect the cities, to keep Russia off sovereign Ukrainian land, and at the same time, he needs to find a way to stop the fighting, at least to pause it so that they can get into these areas and help the civilians who are trapped in basements. The one negative to that, and we've heard this from Ukrainian officials, they worry this is a stalling tactic from the Russians, that the Russians are engaging in peace talks so that they can reassess and they can regroup and then they can start attacking again. That's the concern that he has in negotiating directly with them, though he says it is time to do so, Joshua.
And very briefly, Cal, one last quick question. How long will you stay in Ukraine? How do correspondents covering a war like this know when it's time to rotate out and come back home?
So it's time to rotate out, in my humble opinion, when your brain kind of turns to jello and you cannot do these live shots in a meaningful and intelligent fashion. That's usually somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks. pulling the curtain back, because you asked me to do so. I'm going to try to time it for my kids' Easter break. We'll see if that works out. But the bottom line is, and I think I probably speak for all the people who are in these videos, we don't want to leave these stories. I've been in Lviv now for a month. I am falling slowly in love with this city. I'm invested in it. So I will stay as long as I can. And then if it's still going on, we'll try to come back here, of course.
Meaningful and intelligent would be quite an understatement for the quality of the reporting you've brought us thus far, Cal. Please do stay safe as best you can. That's NBC's Cal Perry reporting for us again in Lviv, Ukraine.
Thank you, sir.
Still to come, an update on the pandemic. COVID cases are surging in parts of Europe and Asia. So what can the U.S. expect in the next few weeks? Another drug company is proposing adding a booster shot to prevent new COVID infections. Pfizer has already made its request to the FDA, and now Moderna is asking for authorization of a fourth dose, a second booster shot, for all American adults. Each day last week, the U.S. averaged roughly 30,000 cases, 2,200 hospitalizations, and around 1,000 deaths a day. That's the 7-day average. Case numbers have not been that low since last summer. And in the last 14 days, cases dropped nearly 41%. But that's just here in the U.S. Around the world, a new variant is causing caseloads to rise. And you can see the global hotspots on this map. The countries in red and purple, they're seeing higher infection rates this week. Most notably, South Korea, with around 400,000 new daily cases. 400,000. Vietnam and Germany are also seeing a big spike. In the UK, infections are up 38% in the last week, and hospitalizations there are up around 25%. Dr. Anthony Fauci says he is watching this closely.
We generally follow the UK by a few weeks of what goes on in the UK generally happens here. We need to be prepared to pivot and perhaps go back on some of the mitigations, like masking if required. I hope we don't need to go there. I hope we don't. But if we do, we need to be prepared to be flexible.
NBC senior medical correspondent Dr. John Torres joins us now. And Dr. Torres, this new variant, the BA2 variant, tell us about this. We always knew that COVID did not get the memo that we've got vaccines now, we're done with the pandemic. We knew that more variants could come. What should we know about BA2?
And it also didn't get the memo that we're tired of the pandemic and we're ready for it to be over, because it's not ready to be over with us yet. And that's what we're seeing now with the BA2. And essentially the BA2 is what we call a subvariant. So it's the Omicron variant, and it's changed just a little bit from the original Omicron. But here's the big difference. If you remember Delta, Omicron came along and completely wiped out Delta, and then started these huge peaks of cases that we had, 800,000 cases a day here in the U.S. Well, BA2 is that subvariant of Omicron, so it's really competing with Omicron. It's almost competing with itself. And right now you can see there, 97 countries. Here in the U.S., though, it's only 23% of the variants we're seeing here. The important parts are, one, it's modest transmission over the original Omicron, that BA1. And on top of that, it's kind of a slow burn. So we do think it's going to build up more here, might become the dominant strain here, but at the same time, it's going to be slow over a few weeks, not like the original Omicron that happened very quickly and all of a sudden we had those huge peaks. We think the peaks might be coming back, but they're not going to be nearly as big as they were during the Omicron peaks themselves. And at the same time, we do understand that the medications, the vaccines, they're treating BA2 much like BA1. It's a little more contagious, but it doesn't appear to be any more dangerous, and it doesn't appear to be able to get around the measures that we have, the vaccines and the medications that work against the BA1 itself.
We've also been hearing about this variant that has been referred to as Deltacron. What is the Deltacron variant? Like, is that a thing, or is that just some term that popped up on the internet to describe whatever this is?
It's just a term that popped up. It's not a scientific thing, but essentially it is something that they are keeping an eye on. And what's happening here is basically Deltacron is two different viruses, or two different variants together, the Delta variant and the Omicron variant. And here's what's happening. I'll show you with my little kids model here. But essentially what's happening is the Delta variant is inside here. That's the main part of the virus. The Omicron variant has done the spike protein on it. And so it's combining the two, which means it has some principles of both of them. But the important part is it doesn't seem to be able to outcompete either Delta or Omicron, and that's the difficulty it's having right now. And, essentially the biggest thing is you can see that it really hasn't spread all that much. There's a graphic here and showing it's in 3 different countries. Right here in the U.S., there's only been a handful of cases, very low levels of circulating. And experts, the ones I've talked to, don't appear to seem to think it's going to be a real threat because, again, it's having a hard time outcompeting just a plain Omicron. And that's good because we want to make sure that whatever we have now is what we stay with because that's the way we get under control.
So the net effect of these, Dr. Torres, before I got to let you go, in terms of these new requests for boosters that have come up from Pfizer for senior citizens, for Moderna for all adults, we're just coming up on like 6 months since some older children are able to get the vaccine, 5 and under still can't. Talk us through what this means in terms of the moving target of having vaccines that can stop these various variants. I presume that the research continues to make sure that what we thought the vaccines could do when they rolled out, that they can still do, and that if they start to get outdated, that we update them. But how is that moving target going?
Yeah, and this is the huge question. This is the question that every expert I talk to has at the same time. And they're saying, are we pushing these boosters too close together? Do we need to wait a little bit? And what Pfizer and Moderna have done is they've looked at Israel and what's happened there. And Israel is supplying these boosters to their population, but they're finding out for the younger, healthier adults, doesn't seem to be making a big difference, this 4th shot, the 2nd booster. But for those above the age of 60, it seems to help them a little bit avoid illness and avoid serious illness, which are the important parameters here that we want to make sure we get under control. Now, here in the U.S., again, we're looking at it where cases are more under control. And some experts have told me, let's wait until cases go up and then start doing more mass vaccinations, more mass booster shots. And hopefully by then we have a variant-specific booster because we don't want to be chasing these every 6 months. And so that's the question I think the FDA and the FDA Advisory Committee are going to try and sit down and answer whenever they do this. We think maybe April timeframe. And they have a lot of data, a lot of information, and a lot of discussion to go through before we actually end up getting this 2nd booster shot. Time will tell what really happens here.
Gotcha. Thank you, Doctor. Much appreciated. That's NBC senior medical correspondent, Dr. John Torres. On Capitol Hill, a unique anti-discrimination bill is headed to the Senate. It could protect people of color from being targeted over hairstyles like twists, braids, and cornrows. Today, the House passed the Crown Act along party lines. Supporters said mistreatment over hair is far too common, especially in workplaces.
There's no logical reason that anyone should be discriminated against on any level because of the texture of their hair or the style of their hair.
I have had people tell my employer that I was an embarrassment sitting in the front office because of the way my hair looked.
This is a kitchen table issue in black households.
The bill targets discrimination based on hairstyles and textures, and as you can see, CROWN stands for Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair. Now it heads to the Senate, and it is unclear whether President Biden supports the bill. A group of women is making their mark in the world of rodeo. The sport of breakaway roping is making its debut this month in Houston. It is one of only 2 individual rodeo circuit events that are open to women. Riders tried to lasso a calf after it's been released from a chute. 2 world champion cowgirls told their stories to CNBC's Valerie Castro.
Here's Hope Thompson, number 7 in the world.
It's all over in a matter of seconds.
Wow, how did that one go on?
The crowds at Pro Rodeo Houston are getting their first look at the fast-paced sport of breakaway roping.
This is a good-looking run.
Barrel racing has been the only women's event at this level for years. Now breakaway ropers across the country are pushing for more rodeos and bigger prizes.
Once you nod, you got to get behind the calf and rope the calf as quick as possible.
Larry D. Guy, one of Breakaway's top competitors, trains and holds clinics at her ranch in Abilene, Texas. Something she's known nearly all her life.
I've competed in it since I was 6 years old, and I'm 51 this year.
And she's dominated. The evidence is in the hardware.
I've been a world's champion team roper. I've been a world's champion breakaway roper, a collegiate champion, high school champion.
But it hasn't been without challenges.
I actually grew up in a man's world. I trained roping horses. and women were supposed to barrel race, not really rope. I was told, once you get out of college, your career is, probably done.
Instead of hanging up her rope, she's taking the sport to another level.
In the past few years, it has grown tremendously. Adding another women's event to pro rodeo is going to really add value to rodeo.
In 2019, the Women's Pro Rodeo Association, or WPRA, says 34 pro rodeos included breakaway. Last year, that number grew to more than 200.
So that's the first goal, is to get it in as many rodeos as you can.
Jimmy Monroe is president of the WPRA and Hall of Fame barrel racer.
That's what we did with the barrel race. And once we were there in an event in most of the rodeos, then we worked on the equal money.
Barrel racers earn the same money as the men, but women who compete in breakaway still only make a fraction. The final frontier for the sport is the national finals in Las Vegas, the Super Bowl of rodeo, where breakaway has yet to break through.
We asked them to have it this year. I don't know if we will, if they will make that decision to have it this year, but I think it's going to be in the near future.
I love breakaway rope and I love how fast it is.
Hope Thompson, two-time world champion, trains with Larry D.
You hear of all the men that are very successful. You don't hear about many women, or you didn't. And so she was someone that I really looked up to.
And Larry D is hoping to inspire more women like Hope through her Rope Like a Girl campaign.
I was always taught to not rope like a girl, but I said I am a girl, and I do rope like a girl. And pardon my French, but I want to be a badass girl.
That girl, now a woman, striving to see her passion pay out just like it does for men. And she's confident the day is almost here.
And it will be there. I said I'm not going to quit until it gets where it's supposed to be.
Not only is this the first year that breakaway roping is here at Rodeo Houston, this year it will also pay out the same amount of money as the men's events and women's barrel racing. That's a $50,000 prize. Larry D. Guy hopes that becomes the norm at every competition. I'm Valerie Castro in Houston, NBC News.
Before we go, a quick correction. Last night, we told you about the Artemis 1 rollout at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, part of NASA's program to bring humans back to the moon. I said that the spacecraft was on its way to Launch Pad 39A. That's not quite right. Jonathan emailed us the correction. It's actually 39B. Small error, but significant. Reason being, SpaceX uses 39A these days. Jonathan writes, NASA has a second launch complex or pad called Launch Complex 39B. This is where all future Artemis launches will happen. I grew up in Florida, where you could see the contrails of shuttles in the sky from hundreds of miles away, so 39A is probably just part of my childhood memories. Jonathan, thank you for that. We always welcome your questions, corrections, even compliments. We're at NBC Now tonight on social media. Feel free to leave us a voicemail or send us an email. And with that, your weekend may begin. Until we meet again, I'm Joshua Johnson. We'll see you Monday. Good night.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.